The 12 legendary actresses who wore wigs to hide what Hollywood didn't want you to see. They were the untouchable queens of the silver screen, icons of beauty, grace, and glamour. But beneath the perfectly styled waves and dazzling lights lay a hidden truth: fragile hairlines, thinning strands, and the damage done by an industry obsessed with perfection. Behind every camera flash was a secret they hoped the world would never notice until now. Get ready to uncover the truth behind the wigs, the stars, and the carefully constructed illusion of old Hollywood. Number 12. Lucille Ball. It's the most famous red hair that wasn't hers. Lucille Ball's fiery red hair is one of the most recognizable trademarks in television history, but here's the twist. The color wasn't real, and neither, for much of her career, was the hair itself. Born with mousy brown locks, Lucy transformed into a copper-haired icon thanks to the magic of hair dye and, eventually, wigs. The intense studio lighting, daily styling for hours on end. The chemical dyes used in the 1940s and 50s were ruthless. By the time I Love Lucy was dominating American living rooms, her hair had already paid the price. Behind the scenes, stylists wrestled with thinning, breakage, and damaged roots. So, Lucy's team crafted a collection of wigs so convincing most fans never knew. Her famous hairstylist, Irma, once revealed that Lucy had several custom red wigs for different lighting setups, each shade carefully designed to maintain that perfect illusion of vibrant, healthy hair. But this wasn't just vanity. It was survival in an industry where image was currency. Lucy's wigs became her silent armor, shielding her from criticism and preserving the character the world adored. Even off camera, she often wore them, choosing to remain Lucy Ricardo rather than reveal what decades in show business had done to her natural hair. The red hair made her a legend. The wigs made her untouchable. Number 11. Judy Garland. A voice that soared and hair that couldn't keep up. When Judy Garland stepped onto the yellow brick road in The Wizard of Oz, she wasn't just stepping into Hollywood history. She was stepping into a machine that would both immortalize and exhaust her. While the world marveled at her voice and big brown eyes, few noticed the toll it all took on the girl behind the curtain, including her hair. Judy's natural hair was thick and wavy in her youth. But as the pressures of the studio system closed, in long shoots, constant styling, and punishing beauty routines, her hair began to weaken. MGM dictated everything from her weight to her appearance, and her hair endured relentless manipulation. Curlers, tight braids, hot irons, and daily restyling to create that sweet, innocent girl-next-door image. By her 20s, Judy was turning more and more to wigs and hairpieces, not just for roles, but for her own comfort. The damage had been done. In her later years, her hair became thinner, brittle, and uncooperative. On stage and screen, she wore expertly styled wigs that captured the glamour her natural hair could no longer provide. But here's what made Judy different. She didn't hide behind the wigs. She performed through them. Her emotional honesty, her vulnerability, her unmatched presence, all of it shone through, no matter what she wore on her head. The wigs weren't a disguise. They were just another costume for a woman who never stopped giving everything to the spotlight, even when it took a piece of her in return. Hedy Lamarr, the most beautiful woman in the world, with a closet full of wigs. Hedy Lamarr's beauty was once described as so perfect it didn't look real, and in a way, it wasn't. On screen, she was hypnotic, jet black waves cascading over porcelain, skin, eyes like polished onyx. But behind that flawless image was a woman with a secret dependency on wigs, not for fashion, but for necessity. Her natural hair was much finer than it appeared on camera. It lacked the volume the studio craved, and under harsh lights, it often fell flat. Add to that the strain of heavy styling, frequent dye jobs, and the rigid image MGM built around her, and you had a recipe for rapid hair fatigue. What the audience saw was a lush mane. What Hedy saw in the mirror was something else entirely. So the wigs came out. Not one or two, but a whole wardrobe. She worked with top stylists to create hairpieces. That gave her the illusion of thickness and depth, sometimes layering them over her own hair, other times replacing it entirely. The idea was simple. Perfection always. Perfection had no place in her story, or so the studios believed. Yet there was something ironic in it all. Hedy Lamarr, praised for her face, famous for her hair, wasn't just a pretty image. A brilliant inventor and intellect hidden beneath beauty, but Hollywood only saw the surface. And that surface, stunning as it was often synthetic. It's the most beautiful woman in the world. Yes. And some of that beauty came right off a wig. Number 10, Joan Crawford. Steel eyes, fragile hair. Joan Crawford built her image on control. From her razor-sharp eyebrows to her sculpted cheekbones, every detail of her appearance was meticulously crafted to exude power. But beneath the Hollywood armor and those steely, commanding stares was hair in retreat. Joan's natural hair endured decades of abuse at the hands of stylists, studios, and the shifting standards of fame. Early in her career, it was bleached, curled, and reworked daily, often several times a day for multiple film scenes. By the 1950s, her once lush hair had begun to thin noticeably. The solution? Wigs, lots of them. She didn't just wear wigs on screen. She wore them in interviews, on red carpets, even at home. Always tailored, always sculpted to frame her face just right. Joan didn't see them as cover-ups. She saw them as tools, extensions of her image. The hairstyle became a silhouette, bold. Tight curls or dramatic waves designed not just to distract, but to dominate. But here's the fascinating part. Even in private, Crawford was rarely seen without one of her signature wigs. Vanity, perhaps, but also vulnerability. For a woman who had clawed her way from the chorus line to Oscar glory, image was survival. Her wigs weren't just about hiding bad hair. They were about maintaining power in a business that took more than it gave. Underneath every perfectly placed strand was a woman who refused to let time or truth define her. Number 9, Bette Davis. Hair that couldn't keep up with her fire. Bette Davis had a face that could freeze a room and a voice that could cut glass. She didn't just act. She confronted, challenged, and dared you to look away. But while her performances burned with raw electricity, her hair often couldn't handle the heat. In her early years, Betty's natural hair was thick, soft brown, and adaptable, just what the studios needed. But Davis wasn't just any actress. She demanded roles that pushed boundaries, and that meant frequent transformations. Drastic dye jobs, heavy wigs, brutal styling sessions, and little time for recovery between roles. By the 1940s, her hair was beginning to thin, exhausted by the pace of a woman who simply never stopped. Bette embraced wigs not as a cover, but as an evolution. In films like All About Eve, her wig became part of the performance, an accessory with purpose. And as she aged, the wigs became more essential of and off-screen. Elegant bobs, towering updos, and tightly styled waves became her trademark looks, often more synthetic than natural. But she didn't pretend otherwise. Bette Davis never played the Hollywood illusion game. She knew the business was obsessed with youth and surface perfection, so in true Davis fashion, she took control. She chose her wigs the way she chose her roles. Bold, deliberate, unapologetic. Underneath them was a woman who knew exactly who she was and didn't give a damn if you liked. Number 8, Vivien Leigh. Beauty built on glass. Vivien Leigh was ethereal. So beautiful, it felt almost unreal. As Scarlett O'Hara, she lit the screen on fire. As Blanche Dubois, she unraveled before our eyes. But behind that haunting elegance was a woman as fragile as she was fierce, and her hair bore silent witness to the storm within. Vivien's natural hair was dark, fine, and naturally wavy, but wasn't built for the demands of the screen. Ingone. With the wind, her hair was styled, steamed, and set daily under scorching lights. When it couldn't deliver the drama, the studio didn't hesitate. They brought in wigs, lavish, heavy, custom-made masterpieces, and it didn't stop there. As her life off-screen grew more complex, the toll on her body and her hair became harder to hide. Health issues and intense periods of stress led to thinning, breakage, and the need for more and more hairpieces. But Vivien never complained. She wore each wig with the same grace she gave her most iconic roles. there's something deeply poetic. In it all, a woman praised for her beauty, yet quietly relying on something artificial to maintain it. Vivien understood the contradiction. She once said, "I'm not a film star, I'm an actress." And yet the world demanded both. The wigs she wore weren't just for vanity. They were shields, delicate armor for a woman fighting battles behind a mask of perfection. Glass may shimmer, but it cracks under pressure. Vivien Leigh shone until the very end. And under every shimmering wave of hair was quiet resilience. Number 7, Mae West. Blonde bombshell who never took off her wig. Mae West didn't just walk into a room. She entered all hips, wit, and platinum hair. She was a one-woman show, dripping with confidence and double entendres. But if you ever wondered how her hair looked so perfectly sculpted day or night, the answer is simple. You never actually saw her real hair. Mae West was rarely, if ever, seen without a wig. Long before it was common practice, she had embraced the art of the hairpiece and turned it into a signature. But this wasn't just about fashion. It was necessity. Her natural hair, reportedly thin and sparse from a young age, couldn't live up to the sensual bombshell image she had so carefully cultivated. Years of bleach, vacuuming, and show stress only made things worse. So Mae took matters into her own perfectly manicured hands, literally. She handpicked her wigs, often styling them herself, and demanded they be part of her on-set look from the moment she became a star. Unlike many of her peers, she didn't hide the fact. In fact, she liked the control. Her wigs weren't just hair. They were personas. With a change of curls, she could go from sultry siren to steel-willed queen. And the real Mae. That was nobody's business but hers. In a town obsessed with youth and natural beauty, Mae West proved you didn't need to be either. To own the room, you just needed attitude and a damn good wig. Number 6. Rita Hayworth. The hairline that launched a legend. Rita Hayworth was the fantasies of slow-motion hair flip, the sultry eyes beneath a curtain of auburn waves. In the 1940s, she redefined sex appeal. But what few people knew was that everything about her iconic look was carefully engineered. Starting with her hair, Rita wasn't born a redhead. She wasn't even born Rita Hayworth. As Margarita Canzino, she entered Hollywood with thick raven black hair and a dancer's poise. But the studios didn't want ethnicity. They wanted glamour, so they reshaped her literally. To transform her appearance, Rita underwent a painful procedure to raise her naturally low hairline electrolysis, week after week, to burn away follicles and sculpt a new frame for her face. Then came the bleaching, the curling, the hours under, hot irons. Her once dark locks were turned into that famous reddish glow fury on screen, but quietly destructive behind the scenes. The damage was cumulative. By the time she was a household name, her hair was weakened, brittle, and unreliable under studio lights. So wigs stepped in seamlessly, invisibly. They weren't just for convenience, they were the only way to preserve the illusion. And Rita understood illusion better than most. She once said, "Men go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." It was never just about hair, it was about the persona people wanted to see. Behind the cascading curls was a woman remade for the screen strand by strand. And when her real hair couldn't keep up, Hollywood made sure the fantasy never missed a beat. Number 5, Elizabeth Taylor. The crown of a queen in a closet of wigs. Elizabeth Taylor was born to be seen. Violet eyes, flawless skin, and that unmistakable presence. She didn't just play queens, she embodied them. But even royalty has its secrets. And behind the diamonds and tiaras was a woman who often relied on wigs to maintain her image of effortless beauty. As a child star, Liz had famously thick dark hair, so lush it naturally grew in double rows of eyelashes, a rare genetic trait that only added to her mystique. But the years weren't always kind. Decades in the spotlight, harsh studio styling, and numerous health battles, including serious illnesses and surgeries, took a toll on her once-silvered hair. By her 30s and 40s, Taylor increasingly wore wigs both on and off screen. Not because she lacked beauty, but because she demanded control over her image. Every public appearance was an event, and her wigs gave her instant transformation glamour on command. Sometimes they mimicked her natural style. Other times, they offered dramatic reinvention. Unlike many of her peers, Liz never shied away. From the theatrical, she embraced the drama of it all, hair included. Her wig collection became as iconic as her jewelry, with styles for every occasion, every mood, every role she stepped into, on camera or off. Elizabeth Taylor was never defined by what was real and what wasn't. She was defined by presence, and whether her hair was hers or not, when she walked into her room, she was the moment. Number 4. Greta Garbo. The hair was just another thing she left behind. Greta Garbo didn't just retire from Hollywood, she vanished. The screen legend who once captivated the world with a single glance walked away from fame and never looked back. But long before she stepped into obscurity, Garbo had already started. Hiding something her hair? Known for her sleek, sculptural beauty, Garbo was often cast as the enigmatic woman. The untouchable goddess with ice-blonde hair and shadowed eyes, but that sculpted perfection came at a price. Her natural hair, fine and unremarkable by Hollywood standards, couldn't withstand the relentless demands of 1930s film production. Bleach, hot rollers, and endless reshoots under blistering lights left her strands damaged, brittle, and thinning. By her later films, wigs had become a quiet necessity. It's not dramatic ones, no towering starlet styles, but subtle, expertly crafted. Pieces that gave her the volume and structure the camera demanded. Off-screen, she wore them too, particularly in her later years when age and privacy became her priorities. Garbo never chased glamour. In fact, she resented it. To impress, but to disappear. There were another layer of distance between her and the public, like the oversized sunglasses, the scarves, the sudden disappearances from parties. She is remembered for her mystery, her solitude, her refusal to play by Hollywood's rules. Wigs, they were just part of the armor she used to escape a world that wanted too much. Greta Garbo didn't want to be seen. And when her hair could no longer hide her, she chose wigs. Then she chose silence. Number 3. Marlene Dietrich. Every strand was strategy. Marlene Dietrich didn't have hair. She had a weapon. In a world where women were expected to play by the rules, Dietrich wrote her own, and that included what grew on her head. From her smoldering femme fatale roles to her androgynous suits, she turned appearance into performance. And when her natural hair began to thin under the weight of constant reinvention, she did what all great strategists do. She adapted. Marlene's early hair ash blonde, thin and fine, was never the voluminous mane the studio machine wanted. But Dietrich didn't chase youth or illusion. Instead, she curated herself like a work of art. Working with legendary stylist Sydney Gilleroff, she built a wardrobe of wigs that enhanced her bone structure, lit her face like a sculpture, and turned her into living cinema. She didn't try to hide the artifice, she leaned into it. On stage, her wigs sparkled under spotlights, part of a carefully orchestrated image. Offstage, she rarely went without one. Each wig was custom-tailored, styled to perfection, and stored like a priceless object. Even into her later years, as her natural hair thinned further, Dietrich refused to relinquish the image. She didn't soften, she sharpened. Her look wasn't about hiding flaws, it was about owning every frame, every flashbulb, every entrance. The wigs weren't deception, they were declaration. In Marlene's world, glamour wasn't born. It was built one strand at a time. Number 2. Lana Turner, a blonde built by Hollywood and reinforced with wigs. Lana Turner didn't audition for stardom. It found her. One afternoon at a soda fountain, she was discovered, and overnight a legend was born. With her platinum curls, velvet voice, and come-hither stare, Lana became the very image of a Hollywood bombshell. But what the world didn't see, what the cameras never caught, was the quiet war happening beneath those curls. Lana's natural hair was soft chestnut brown, lovely, but ordinary by 1930s standards. Hollywood wanted extraordinary, so her transformation began. Intense bleaching, near daily heat styling, and the sculpting of her now iconic golden waves. It worked. On screen, she was luminous. Off screen, her hair was another story. Years of Chemical treatments left it weak and brittle. Her once full locks thinned, and breakage became constant. So, the wigs arrived not as flashy accessories, but as silent necessities. Blonde, always carefully styled, designed to mimic the dream she had become. What's striking about Lana is how seamlessly the wigs blended into her life. She didn't treat them as a secret or a shame, but as part of the armor every starlet needed. To survive in an industry that valued image above all else, they allowed her to stay Lana Turner ageless, untouchable even as time moved forward. Her beauty was iconic. Her wigs were part of the myth. But underneath them was a woman who understood exactly what Hollywood demanded and gave it to them flawlessly, strand by synthetic strand. These 12 women weren't just stars. They were survivors. Icons shaped not only by talent and beauty, but by the relentless demands of an industry that often asked too much. Their wigs weren't just fashion statements or vanity projects. They were shields, tools, and in many cases, necessities. And yet through it all, they delivered unforgettable performances, carved their names into history, and inspired generations to come. We honor them not by exposing secrets, but by recognizing the strength it took to maintain the illusion and the courage it took to live behind it. If you enjoyed this journey behind the scenes of old Hollywood, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Which story surprised you the most? Who would you like to see featured next? Thank you for watching and remembering the legends, not just for how they looked, but for everything they overcame to shine.